5 wrestlers, 5 careers that reached the absolute top of professional wrestling, and 5 falls that nobody saw coming, until the moment they could no longer be ignored. One of them was the most pushed superstar of his generation, booed out of arenas he was supposed to headline. One of them held the WWE Championship at WrestleMania and was gone from the company within 18 months. One of them was so dominant that WWE built entire years of television around him, and then watched the audience slowly stop caring. One of them burned so bright and so fast that the landing was always going to be hard. And one of them made decisions that no championship run could ever undo. These are not stories about bad wrestlers. Every name on this list was at the top of this business. That is what makes each fall so hard to watch, and so impossible to look away from. At WrestleMania 31 in March 2015, Roman Reigns stood in the ring, having just survived Brock Lesnar for 20 minutes. The crowd in Levi's Stadium was ready to crown a new era. WWE had spent 2 years building him for exactly this moment. He had the look. He had the backing. He had everything the company could give a performer. At WrestleMania 34 in April 2018, Jinder Mahal was a former WWE champion. He had held the title for 6 months, headlined pay-per-view events, and represented WWE on international tours to India. Ryback, in 2012, was the hottest rising act in WWE. The crowds chanted his name with a volume that made arenas shake. WWE saw a star and pushed him to the top of the card immediately. Jeff Hardy, by 2009, was one of the most beloved performers in the history of the company. He had just won the WWE Championship on a Raw in December 2008, defeating Edge in front of a crowd that erupted with genuine joy. And Alberto Del Rio arrived in WWE in 2010 as one of the most polished, fully formed characters the company had signed in years. Within 12 months, he was WWE Champion. Within 2 years, he had won the title multiple times across both brands, 5 wrestlers, 5 peaks. But here is the question that runs through every one of these stories. Were these falls caused by the wrestlers themselves, or by a system that set them up to fail? That answer is different for each person on this list, and it will not come until the end. Roman Reigns came from a family that had produced multiple WWE Hall of Famers. His father, Sika, was a tag team champion. His cousin, Dwayne Johnson, was the most famous name the business had ever produced. But Reigns himself had spent only 3 years on the main roster before WWE placed the entire company on his shoulders. 3 years. Jinder Mahal had been released by WWE in 2014. He returned in 2016, spent months as enhancement talent, and was then elevated to the WWE Championship in May 2017, not because of a sustained creative build, but because WWE was expanding aggressively into the Indian market and needed a South Asian champion. The decision was openly reported as business-driven. Ryback had trained for years in developmental before getting over organically with the crowd in late 2012. His momentum was real. His crowd reactions were real. But his push came faster than anyone around him had prepared for. Jeff Hardy had been in WWE since the late 1990s. He had built genuine emotional connection with audiences over a decade of high-risk performances. But by 2009, documented personal struggles that had followed him through his career were becoming harder to contain professionally. Alberto Del Rio had spent years as one of the most respected workers in Mexico before signing with WWE. His character, the wealthy aristocrat who arrived in a luxury car with a personal ring announcer, was immediately clear and immediately effective. But the sustained creative investment he needed to thrive never fully arrived. Every single one of these falls has a root, and in most cases, the root was already there at the peak. The first sign with Roman Reigns came at the 2015 Royal Rumble in Philadelphia. He entered as the heavily promoted favorite. When he won, the building did not celebrate, it deflated. The boos were not the boos of a crowd reacting to a villain. They were the sound of an audience refusing to accept the story they were being told. That specific reaction in Philadelphia on January 25, 2015 is documented extensively. It was not heat, it was rejection. With Jinder Mahal, the first crack was visible in the television ratings for SmackDown during his championship reign. The documented viewership numbers declined consistently across the months of his title run. According to reporting from wrestling media outlets that tracked weekly figures, the crowd was not hostile. It was indifferent. With Ryback, the crack appeared in 2014 when WWE began giving him character work that did not match what had made him connect with audiences. The organic crowd reactions that had made him a genuine talking point in 2012 were fading. and he was vocal about it. Documented public statements from Ryback, in subsequent years, confirmed he felt the company's handling of his character actively worked against the momentum he had built. With Jeff Hardy, the first documented professional consequence of his personal struggles came during his first WWE run, which ended in 2003. He returned, rebuilt his reputation, and reached the peak of his career. But the documented record shows the personal issues that cost him that first run had never been fully resolved. The warning signs were there long before December 2008. With Del Rio, the creative cracks showed in 2013 when his second championship reign failed to produce the sustained crowd investment his character needed. He was technically proficient, his character was clear. But something in how WWE was booking him was not connecting the way the first run had suggested it should. Each of these cracks was small when it appeared. None of them were inevitable, but none of them were addressed in time. The collapse of Roman Reigns' first push reached its most visible point at WrestleMania 32 in April 2016. He was WWE Champion, headlining the most attended WrestleMania in history at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. With a documented crowd of over 101,000 people, he lost the championship to Triple H. Then he hit Triple H with a spear and posed in the ring while the crowd booed, not because he had done something wrong in the story, because the audience had been fighting this push for over a year and WWE had not listened. Jinder Mahal lost the WWE Championship to AJ Styles at Clash of Champions in November 2017. Within months, his position on the card had returned to where it was before the title run. The run had served its business purpose, but it had not built a sustained star. Ryback requested his release from WWE in May 2016. He has stated in documented interviews that a combination of creative frustrations, pay structure disagreements, and a belief that WWE was not invested in his long-term success led him to walk away. Jeff Hardy's collapse became public at the TNA Sacrifice pay-per-view in May 2011. He appeared in a main event match in a condition so visibly impaired that the match was ended rapidly. It was documented immediately. TNA released him. The moment was covered across wrestling media and became one of the most discussed incidents of that year. Alberto Del Rio was released by WWE in August 2014. WWE cited unprofessional conduct following a backstage incident involving a social media manager. The specific details of the incident were reported at the time, though accounts varied. He returned to WWE in 2015, but the momentum of his initial run was gone. He was released again in 2016. The locker room reaction to Roman Reigns' sustained push was documented in general terms by multiple wrestlers in interviews over the years. The consistent theme across those accounts was that peers respected Reigns personally, but acknowledged the creative situation had become difficult for everyone involved. Jinder Mahal's title reign was met with open skepticism from a portion of the wrestling media and fan base. The criticism was documented, consistent, and not primarily directed at Mahal the performer. It was directed at WWE's decision to use the championship as a marketing tool rather than a creative one. Ryback's departure generated significant documented fan support. His social media following remained loyal, but the professional consequences of leaving were real. He has not worked for a major national promotion since his WWE release. Jeff Hardy's 2011 incident generated a documented response across the wrestling community that was notable for its sadness rather than its anger. People who had worked with Hardy described, in various documented interviews across subsequent years, a genuine affection for him alongside a genuine helplessness about the situation. Alberto Del Rio's 2014 release generated relatively limited public comment from peers. The focus in media reporting was on the backstage incident rather than on the career trajectory. Roman Reigns turned heel in August 2020 at SummerSlam. He aligned with Paul Heyman, adopted the tribal chief character, and produced some of the most acclaimed work of his career. The crowds that had rejected him for 5 years watched his new character with genuine sustained investment. His career did not fall, it reset. Jeff Hardy returned to WWE multiple times after 2011. He had additional championship moments, additional crowd connections, and continued evidence of his ability to connect with audiences. He was released by WWE in December 2021 following a documented wellness policy violation. His story is not finished, but it is not the story it should have been. Ryback has remained independent since 2016. He has spoken extensively about his WWE tenure in documented podcast appearances and social media content. Jinder Mahal continued with WWE for years after his title run, working in various roles. He has been honest in interviews about the circumstances of his championship reign and what it represented. Alberto Del Rio has worked on the independent circuit since his second WWE release. His career outside WWE has been complicated by legal matters reported publicly in subsequent years, which fall outside the scope of this documentary. Roman Reigns proved that a fall is not always a fall. Sometimes it is a wrong road that eventually leads to the right destination. Jinder Mahal's title run proved that championships are only as valuable as the creative investment behind them. When they serve a business purpose without serving a story, the audience notices. Ryback proved that organic crowd connection is one of the rarest things in professional wrestling, and one of the easiest things for a company to waste. Jeff Hardy proved that talent, crowd love, and genuine human connection cannot protect a person from themselves, and that the wrestling business, for all its loyalty to its performers in public, has structural limits on how much it can or will intervene when a performer is struggling personally. Alberto Del Rio proved that arrival with everything. The look, the character, the in-ring ability is not enough if the long-term creative partnership is not there. 5 falls, 5 different reasons, 5 different lessons. But one truth that sits underneath every single one of them. In professional wrestling, reaching the top is only half the story. Staying there requires something the company cannot give you, and no title belt can provide. The distance between the peak and the fall is never as far as it looks from the outside, and always further than it feels from the inside.